Welcome to Patient Profiles. In this video, we are going to discuss how to construct an event table. We use an event table to populate a timeline, and today we are going to construct an event table using the adverse event dataset. First, you must define the day zero date. Without a day zero date, the program will be unable to place the events from the event table into the timeline. So we do that by first locating the randomization date variable, and then dragging it over to the day zero date button. Next, we're going to click the new row button and select event table row. And then we just come into the AE dataset and start selecting variables that we'd like displayed in the table. We're going to include the reported term, the dictionary derived term, and the start date. We would like to use the character variable just in case there are partial dates. We'd like to preserve those. So we select that variable and change the data type to a date data type, and then drag it over to the column 3 button. And we'll do the same thing for the end date variable. We're also going to include the serious variable, as well as severity, causality, action taken with study treatment, the outcome, and finally, the treatment emergent flag. The next thing we're going to do is adjust the column width so that when we click over to report view, everything is visible. So we do that by just clicking on the column name and then clicking this minus button at the top here. Now we can see up here there is a yellow triangle and it says the event start column must be a date or numeric variable. We can fix that by scrolling down to the timeline options window, and we can see that the event start date column is currently set to be column 2, where we have our dictionary derived term variable. So we're going to change that to column 3 for the start date and the end date for column 4. And we're also going to change our event name column to be column 2 because we would prefer to see the dictionary derived term in our timeline. We can just confirm that our show in timeline box is checked and we've selected our timeline name. We currently only have one. And when we click over to report view, we can see our event table beginning to take shape. It's populated with the events and it's currently sorting alphabetically by reported term. And down here we see our events listed within our timeline. So we're going to come back over to design view and make a few changes to the appearance of the table and the timeline. First, we're going to give our table a name. We'll change that to adverse events, and in the table options window, we'll also change the name. We see that change reflected up here in the profile layout window. Next, we're going to sort our table by column 3, so that the events are listed chronologically rather than alphabetically. Next, we're going to scroll down here and we're going to change the header text color to black and the back color to this green. And the subheader we're going to change to be an 8-point font that is italicized with a lighter gray background color. And we're just going to change the name of some of these columns. We'll change this 4th column to be end date, serious, severity, causality, outcome. And when we click over to our report view, we see those changes taking shape. Our color and font adjustments to the header and subheader, and we can see that our events are now listed chronologically. When we scroll down to our timeline, we can see that there is an event that goes all the way to the end of the timeline and doesn't have an ending diamond. And when we click back over to design view, we can see that in the timeline options window, the extend line if stop date missing box is checked. So that's why that particular event has its line extending all the way to the end of the timeline. We can also check off the end line for ongoing events at last date available box, and then we'll see that that is indicated in the timeline by this white diamond. So now we can see that the fungal infection is continuing until the last date available for this particular patient. Now we're going to color code our events based on severity. So we come to color by column and we change that to be column 6. So we see our possible values for severity and then we select the colors that we'd like to use. So for severe we'll use crimson, and for moderate we will use dark orange, and for mild we will use a deep sky blue, and for the unknown severity events, we will use pale green. So when we come over to report view and scroll down to our timeline, we can see that our events are now color coded. And we'd like to add a legend below the timeline so that we know what each of the colors indicate. And we do that by coming back into design view. We click on our timeline, and then we check off this timeline legend box. One additional thing we're going to add is our point color by column option, and we're going to do that based on whether or not the event is serious. And we'll change our yes events to be black and our non-serious events to be pink. And when we click over to report view, scroll down to our timeline, we can see the point colors have changed and all of the events that occurred for this patient are not serious. And that's the end of how to create an event table.